Okay kids, welcome back to my videos. Today is a little El Cheapo yard machine lawnmower, and this one has been left out in the rain. Now in Florida we have sand and grass, and if you have sand like that, it's exposed, and you leave your mower sit, when it rains, every raindrop splashes sand all up into your machine. And in this case, we have a machine that did not have a cover or an air filter on it. And what you end up with when you take it apart is a carburetor full of sand. I don't know if you can see inside of there, but this whole thing is filled with sand. Now that sand blows straight into your intake and straight into your piston, the actual heart of the motor, and it can destroy your motor. Now in this case, we caught it early. The guy brought me the mower. He says my wife leaves it out in the rain and doesn't take care of it. Lost the air filter and the cover. And got problems with the mower. It says when he squeezes the primer bulb, nothing happens. But if you spray it with a little bit of carb cleaner or starting fluid, she'll start right up and run. Now I've tested this, and that is true. But we've got sand in the carburetor. Most likely there's sand in the engine. And the only way to get that out is to completely take the machine apart, clean it, rebuild it, put it back together. As you saw, it smoked when I started it. This is, the motor, you can buy these used for 75 bucks. It's not worth doing anything more to it. We're going to do a spring cleanup on it. We're going to clean the carburetor, clean the body off, change the oil, sharpen the blade, that kind of stuff. Sand got into the primer bulb. You can see that. The whole back of this is covered in sand. And your primer bulb, the way that works is it pulls air in right here from the back. It pulls air in, it pushes air in, and then it creates a vacuum and sucks fuel up to go into here and prime your carburetor. So the primer bulb is going to be replaced. This whole thing's going to be cleaned. The carburetor is going to be cleaned. We're going to put it back together after we get it all cleaned off, and that should take care of it. In order to get the carburetor off of here, you'll see a lot of videos where they'll take this cover off here. Got 4 little screws in it. And then they'll try and deal with the carburetor and get it off. You got linkages, you got hoses, you got all kinds of crap. And I learned a long time ago, just pull it apart. It only takes a minute. Get stuff out of your way, pull it apart. This just lifts off. And you need a pair of pliers. Get that. Little clamp off your fuel line. And I like to take it off before I remove the carburetor, just because then you have some leverage and you won't break anything. Give it a twist to make sure it's not stuck on there. Pull it off, and you're good to go. In this case, I'm going to drain that fuel anyway. This just slides off. It's got a little O-ring in the back side. It's got one linkage and the carburetor's off. Here's your O-ring. There's your O-ring, and the white ring holds it in place. Goes in the back side. You put the O-ring in first. And then this little clip just goes in. It doesn't matter which way it fits in. It just clips in place. And then that goes back on your intake here. And this hose here goes in the back of this housing right here. So when you put that back on, you put that on here. That's it. You got one linkage, no problem. We're gonna take all this stuff in, get it all cleaned up, cleaned out, and see what it looks like. So here, we've got a new cover. I didn't have any used ones, but we have the new cover. That goes on here, like so. We got this dirty carburetor, and we got to replace this primer bulb. Here's the new primer bulb. I'm not putting part numbers up there. A lot of things are interchangeable, and the bottom line is, when you order parts, you've got to pull the numbers off your motor, look them up online, and order them. And if you rely on me to give you parts and part numbers, you might order the wrong thing. So, as you can see, this has a clip on both sides. Basically, it just pushes into place here. Now, we're not trying to salvage this. It's old, and the new one was, you know, $5. So we're going to replace that. We're just going to rip this out. Now that that's out of the way, we'll just use a screwdriver and get that clip out of there. There used to be little spaces around here that you could push those clips back in and get that out and retrieve it, but it don't work that way on these new motors. The newer models, they want everything to be trashed, so just work it out. That's the old one. It's going to be thrown away. It's kind of dried out, but it looked like it still might have worked. But what we definitely have is sand up in here, and that sand will get stuck. It'll vibrate in between this ring and this rubber, and it will create a pocket where air can get in and out, and it'll stop your it'll stop it from working correctly. So you just want to get all the sand out of here. You'll notice I didn't spray anything in there yet. Florida has very dry sugar sand, we call it. And when it gets wet, it's just harder to get out. It kind of sticks like glue. So in this case, I want to get out as much as I can before I start spraying and getting more stuff than I can get out. So now we got most of it out, or at least most that I can get with a brush. That's all. Get all up in the back. Sand is hard. It's, you know, it's what they make glass out of. It doesn't crush, and it kind of cuts through plastic and rubber with vibration. So you have sand on your stuff, not mud like people up north do. Sand will vibrate itself into any little space it can make, you can find, and then the vibration will cut that space larger and larger till that piece of sand actually fits inside of the hole it made, like a drill bit. So you want to make sure that you get all the sand out. Now, you know me, I don't cut my videos because these are made for my customers. So now I'm just spraying it all out, getting it all out of there, getting this all clean. You could use soap and water if you want to, but this won't leave any residue. This is just carb cleaner. And now I can fit this back in. Now if you can see in there, right there is an opening, and right there is an opening, and that's where these two pieces of the clip fit. And it looks like from underside I could have squeezed that together and pulled it out, but we weren't trying to salvage the old one. So now we just fit the new one, push it down in place, push a little on each side so you get it to seat correctly and clip in place. If you try to push one side all the way before you fit the other, you may not get it in. So now I'm trying to spin it. I'm squeezing the bulb and trying to spin it, and it isn't spinning. I can look underneath in here and here, and I can see my white plastic has gone where it's supposed to be. I'm going to give it one final push just to make sure it's completely locked in. And that's about it. We're done. Now all I'm going to do is clean up this carburetor. You see it's got sand all over it too. So I'm going to clean that up. These are ultimately my favorite carburetors to clean. Most people hate them, and that's fair. But they're my favorite to clean because I can actually take it apart and see everything that's in there. Most people don't like them because they don't know how to take them apart. Do not do what I do. Do not use an impact driver when you're working on this stuff. I use it to take it out. You can take it off with that. Make sure you're going in the right direction. Take out those two. Then just use a screwdriver. Or as my old pappy would say, get a crew driver. And there's your fuel. The inside doesn't look too bad. Same thing here. You do what I always do. People always say you're stupid, you're crazy. I've been doing this for a long time. This is how I check to see if my needle and seat is any good. This is where the fuel line goes on. Fuel line clips on right there. This is your float bowl. When it's in the down position, it allows fuel to flow from the fuel line into the carburetor. When it fills up, just like your toilet, it pushes up. There's a needle in there that cuts off the fuel. So in the up position, it shouldn't allow anything through, and in the down position, it will. So when I blow on this, I play it like a trumpet. I push it up and down to see if I can hear that the air stops out of my mouth. And it does. If you don't want to do that, don't do it. Everybody's worrying about toxic diseases and everything else. I just don't care. I don't wear gloves. I don't have cancer. I also didn't get COVID. It is what it is. But anyway, your needle and seat, I use a screwdriver because on this model it just clips in. There's your needle. Just fell out. Don't worry, it just fits in there. This just goes through the hole. And when we're ready to put it back on, we'll hang the needle, put it all back down, and push that down in place. It doesn't have to pull out, it just clips in. Then I take this, use my finger, my thumb here to rest the screwdriver on. It hurts a little, but who cares? Now I've got my jet out. Now the jet only goes together one way. You've seen my other videos, so you know that I've done this before. The jet only fits on one way. You see this side is lower than this side, so when this clips on, you know which side that goes on. Pop that out. There's your jet holes. 1, 2, 3, they go straight through. That's it. Spray a little bit of cleaner in there, put it all back together, you're good to go. Standing out here all this time and I didn't turn on the air conditioning. Sweating like a pig. Oink oink. Okay, air conditioning's on. Now, I'm going to move the camera to the other side so you can see I'm right-handed. So, you'll be able to see a little better on my left side. Alright. Basically, I'm just going to spraying here. I'm not worrying about any gunk or anything like that because this thing runs fine. When you spray in the top of the middle one, you're blowing out those jet holes. Blow it out so you can see. Hold it up to the light and make sure they're clear. Hold it up to the light and make sure they're clear through. If you don't blow the liquid out, it may look like it's clogged. I don't know if you can see that, but those are the three we're concerned about. Make sure there's no dirt anywhere else. Make sure your hands stay clean. This is not surgery. We don't have to worry about any of that. Make sure that's cleaned off. That's it. Now again, one side shorter than the other, you know exactly how to put that back on. Long goes down the center, push it down, it lines right up with a clip on the top of there. Don't push hard, don't break it in half. I've done that before. Then you're buying a new carburetor. So as long as you're gentle, you're good to go. Spray out the 3 holes in the center. And again, this one ran just fine. The only reason I'm bothering to clean it out is I want to make sure I get any sand out of it that got sucked into it. That's it. And the reason that it wouldn't start without fluid is because the primer bulb was no good. So we're just giving it a good cleaning. Make sure everything's out, and that's it. Nobody has to be afraid of pulling apart one of these carburetors. As long as you are gentle and don't force the plastic, it'll all clip back in place where it's supposed to. Easy peasy. So we got our float. Make sure we don't lose our little pin. I'm going to spray the float down, just make sure there's no dirt or sand or nothing on it. Don't drop your pin. You'll have fun trying to find it. Right here in the back is a slit. That's where this goes. And it just holds in place. You see it's just hanging there. It lines up with that hole. You put it in. And then your little pin lines up. And this one you just have to push down. Make sure you push it down all the way on both sides, then test it. You're good to go. Just gonna wipe this out real quick, make sure we're still filming. Looks like we are. Put this back together. Sometimes they don't feel like they want to go in. Don't force them. Don't twist it. Twist it where they line up real well, and then push with your fingers. I've seen people that went, oh, it's okay, it doesn't have to be all the way. When I put the screws back in, it'll seat it. And this thing gets jammed up because it's crooked, and you crack the bowl right in half forcing the screws down. So take your time if you have to. Might take a few times. Make sure that's seated all the way, then you can put your screws back in. And again, I've done this long enough. Oh, look at that. See, you didn't remind me. I didn't put the jet back in the damn thing. So, we'll pull it apart again, that's all. Sometimes dumb stuff happens. This only goes in one way. If you look inside, you'll see, but you'll be able to feel it. So don't worry about which direction that points. It fits right in there. See how it drops right down in there? If it was the other way, it wouldn't go down. Don't force it. Let it go down. Push it with your thumbs so it pushes and clicks right in place. That's it. These carburetors are my favorite to work on because unless you forget to put the jet back in and see it sitting on the table, after you put it back together, you really can't mess it up. Everything goes in one way. Everything comes apart easily. And you see the first time it went right together. I'm going to turn it around. Sometimes things fit better one way than they do the other. I need to see why this does not want to go on. Oh, see, this is flatter and this sticks up. I was trying to put it on the wrong two holes. Now it went right in. You see, when something doesn't fit, don't try to force it. Look at it. Pretty much only fits one way. Never be in a hurry. And you'll be alright. Now we're going to go put this back on the machine. You don't need to watch me do that. I'll be back with you in a minute. Now we got this sugar sand to contend with. And it sucks. But I'm just cleaning this side real quick before I put the carburetor back on. Make sure we get everything out of the way. I'm going to spray that intake. Make sure that there's no sand left on it. And I'm going to dump the sand off. And then after I put the carburetor back on and everything, I'll give it a proper clean off. Some people take a pressure washer to it and all that good stuff before they start. Me, I don't like to do more work than supposed to happen. So I usually yep. So I usually clean off the area I'm working on and then go from there. Now, the fuel line always faces the fuel tank, which is back here. Fuel line goes there. This just slides back on. Put your linkage back on first. Slide this back in place. We've already checked the rear O-ring and the clip that holds it on. So we're good to go there. The carburetor gets held on by these two brackets, and you need that face to be done first. But I need to clean out this tank. Just get all the sand off of it real quick. There's absolutely nothing wrong with leaving your mower outside, especially without a tarp. A tarp will create lack of airflow and allow things to rust. There's no reason you can't leave your mower outside in the rain. It's not going to hurt it at all. In this case, in Florida sand, that's what's hurting it. Is the fact that sand got all up in there. And screwed it up. So this just clips back onto your carburetor, your carburetor. Make sure you put your hose clamp back on. These two clips go right here. You'll have to pull and kind of stretch it just a little, and that just clips back on. That's back in place. That's back in place. There's my screws. This goes up top. You'll figure that out. Again, there's only one way for it to go on. Put your hose on the back. There are two different kind of screws. two, I believe, are 6 or 7 millimeter, and two that are larger. Two screw directly into from the cover into the carburetor itself, and then two go from the cover to those outer brackets. That's it. That's too small. What did I do with the last? So the two silver heads, the two silver screws are 7 millimeter, and the two that hold the case to the frame are 8 millimeter, and they're dark, they're not silver. So again, you really can't screw them up. Don't force them. You don't see me using a screw gun until I've got them started threading and I know what's going on. Don't use a screw gun to put it together like me until you've been doing this a long time. And you hear that as soon as it starts tapping, I stop. I've been doing this long enough that I can do it by feel. Now in this, every time you pulled this, the little feet did not kick out. And this didn't work, and they thought that was broken as well. It had some sand in the spring actuator, which I cleaned out. And then I shot a little bit of lubrication in there. And now the little feet right here click out the way they're supposed to. Sand is not your friend when it comes to any kind of machine. That, just give it a pull, it'll fall right down where it's supposed to be. These top ones are 8 millimeter as well. Sometimes they're fun to get seated. There we go. Hopefully we're still recording. Phone call was coming in. Now this has no fuel in it now because I threw it all out. Whenever someone brings me a repair, I always get rid of the fuel that's in there, and you never know what kind of shape it was in anyway. And for 50 cents worth of fuel I'm going to put in this thing to make sure it runs. I know I got clean, good fuel and a clean carburetor. So never trust the fuel a customer brings you, because they think it wasn't that old when they got it 7 months ago or a year ago. Hopefully this takes care of the problem. If not, it means the carburetor housing is no good. And it looks like the carburetor housing is no good. And there ain't nothing I can do about that except replace it. Because as soon as I spray it, carb cleaner she'll start right up and run. It's the priming method. Always takes 4 pushes. See, there's nothing wrong with it. The primer just won't work. So in this case, sand got up into it and screwed up the channel where the primer would normally send the fuel. So the carburetor, the whole thing needs to be replaced. Or he'll spend the rest of his days shooting it with a little bit of carb spray. Because in my opinion, a cheap machine like this isn't worth replacing. It's not just the carburetor's fine, that's only about 20 bucks. But the housing, that's another $25. So you're gonna put 50 bucks into a machine, that's without labor, to fix a $70 machine. So it's up to the customer what he wants to do. I'll let him know. See you soon. Okay, sometimes when you're working on a machine, you gotta do stuff that sucks. And in this case, I had to take the carburetor back off, take the housing back off, take everything back apart that you saw, clean it again, put it back together. Because one little piece of sand will cause an issue. Now it's been sitting for about 15 minutes. I went inside, got a little AC. I expect when I pull it, it's not going to start. It needs to be primed. I'm doing this to show you. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No good. This time when I pump the primer 10 times fast, I'm hoping it'll start. We'll see. Times what they won't tell you, especially when you work on multiple machines. Here's another identical machine. This one has the name Bolin slapped on the top of it, and it's a different color body, but it's the exact, and I mean the exact same machine as this yard machine. They're both the same Briggs & Stratton motors, made in the same exact factory. The bodies are made in the same factory, they're just painted a different color to match the company they're making today's 10,000 units for. When a carburetor does not get enough fuel when it begins, it can surge the entire time. So if it surges like that, prime it again. 10, 12, 15 times fast. And then when you start it up, half the time you can stop the surging because it will start with as much fuel as it needs and it'll maintain it. Case, it may still have a little bit of dirt somewhere in there. It may have sucked in a brand new piece of sand. What I'm going to do is put the filter and the cover back on it. I'm going to take it over, fill it up with some fuel, and I'm going to let it run for 30 to 40 minutes to make sure the magneto's good, it doesn't heat up and stop working, and make sure everything's in good shape, and let the carburetor kind of clean itself out with anything I could have missed. It can force out anything that's left and cause it to go good. So I'm going to shut this off. That's today's video. Keep your filter on, keep your cover on, make sure you don't let sand get up and stuff, and you won't have these issues. Now that's it over there. It's been running for about 30 minutes. And if you can hear, there's no surging. Whatever might have been stuck left in that carburetor worked its way out, and there's no surging. Obviously, I put the new cover and filter on. There's no surging anymore. So there you go.